A Road to Self-Knowledge by Rudolf Steiner. Narrated by Matthew Schmitz. Fourth meditation, in which the attempt is made to form a conception of the guardian of the threshold. When the soul has attained the faculty of making observations whilst remaining outside the physical body, certain difficulties may arise with regard to its emotional life. It may find itself compelled to take up quite a different position towards itself from that to which it was formerly accustomed. The soul was accustomed to regard the physical world as outside itself, while it considered all inner experience as its own particular possession. To supersensible surroundings, however, it cannot take up the same position as to the outer world. As soon as the soul perceives the supersensible world around it, it must merge with it to a certain extent. It cannot consider itself as separate from these surroundings as it does from the outer world. Through this fact, all that can be designated as our own inner world in relation to the supersensible surroundings assumes a certain character which is not easily reconcilable with the idea of inward privacy. We can no longer say, "I think," "I feel," or "I have my thoughts and fashion them as I like." But we must say instead, "Something thinks in me, something makes emotions flash forth in me, something forms thoughts and compels them to come forward in an absolutely definite way and make their presence felt in my consciousness." Now, this feeling may contain something exceedingly depressing when the manner in which the supersensible experience presents itself is such as to convey the certainty that we are actually experiencing a reality and are not losing ourselves in imaginary fancies or illusions. Such as it is, it may indicate that the supersensible surrounding world wants to feel and to think for itself, but that it is hindered in the realization of its intention. At the same time, we get a feeling that that which here wants to enter the soul is the true reality and the only one that can give an explanation of all we have hitherto experienced as real. This feeling also gives the impression that the supersensible reality shows itself as something which, in value, infinitely transcends the reality hitherto known to the soul. This feeling is therefore depressing because it makes us feel that we are actually forced to will the next step which has to be taken. It lies in the very nature of that which we have to become through our own inner experience to take this step. If we do not take it, we must feel this to be a denial of our own being, or even self-annihilation. And yet we may also have the feeling that we cannot take it, or if we attempt it as far as we can, it must remain imperfect. All this develops into the idea, such as the soul now is, a task lies before it which it cannot master. Because such as it now is, it is rejected by its supersensible surroundings, for the supersensible world does not wish to have it within its realm. And so the soul arrives at a feeling of being in contradiction to the supersensible world, and has to say to itself, "I am not such as to make it possible for me to mingle with that world, and yet only there can I learn the true reality and my relation to it. For I have separated myself from the recognition of truth." This feeling means an experience which will make more and more clear and decisive the exact value of our own soul. We feel ourselves and our whole life to be steeped in an error, and yet this error is distinct from other errors. The others are thought, but this is a living experience. An error that is only thought may be removed when the wrong thought is replaced by the right one, but the error that has been experienced has become part of the life of our soul itself. We ourselves are the error. We cannot simply correct it, for, think as we will, it is there, it is part of reality, and that too, our own reality. Such an experience is a crushing one for the self. We feel our inmost being painfully rejected by all that we desire. This pain, which is felt at a certain stage in the pilgrimage of the soul, is far beyond anything which can be felt as pain in the physical world, and therefore It may surpass everything which we have hitherto become able to master in the life of our soul. It may have the effect of stunning us. The soul stands before the anxious question, "Whence shall I gather strength to carry the burden laid upon me?" And the soul must find that strength within its own life. It consists in something that may be characterized as inner courage, inner fearlessness. In order now to be able to proceed further in the pilgrimage of the soul, we must have developed so far that the strength which enables us to bear our experiences will well up from within us and produce this inner courage and inner fearlessness in a degree never required for life in the physical body. Such strength is only produced by true self-knowledge. In fact, it is only at this stage of development that we realize how little we have hitherto really known of ourselves. We have surrendered ourselves to our inner experiences without observing them as one observes a part of the outer world. Through the steps that have led to the faculty of extra-physical experience, however, we obtain a special means of self-knowledge. We learn in a certain sense to contemplate ourselves from a standpoint which can only be found when we are outside the physical body, and the depressing feeling mentioned before is itself the very beginning of true self-knowledge. To realize oneself as being in error in one's relations to the outer world is a sign that one is realizing the true nature of one's own soul. It is in the nature of the human soul to feel such enlightenment regarding itself as painful. It is only when we feel this pain that we learn how strong is the natural desire to feel ourselves just as we are, to be human beings of importance and value. It may seem an ugly fact that this is so, but we have to face this ugliness of our own self without prejudice. We did not notice it before, just because we never consciously penetrated deeply enough into our own being. Only when we do so do we perceive how dearly we love that in ourselves which must be felt as ugly. The power of self-love shows itself in all its enormity, and at the same time, we see how little inclination we have to lay aside this self-love. Even when it is only a question of those qualities of the soul which are concerned with our ordinary life and relations to other people, the difficulties turn out to be quite great enough. We learn, for instance, by means of true self-knowledge, that though we have hitherto believed that we felt kindly towards someone, nevertheless we are cherishing in the depths of our soul secret envy or hatred or some such feeling towards that person. We realize that these feelings, which have not as yet risen to the surface, will someday certainly crave for expression, and we see how very superficial it would be to say to ourselves, "Now that you have learned how it stands with you, root out your envy or hatred." For we discover that armed merely with such a thought, we shall certainly feel exceedingly weak, when someday the craving to show our envy or to satisfy our hatred breaks forth as if with elemental power. Such special kinds of self-knowledge manifest themselves in different people according to the special constitution of their souls. They appear when experience outside the body begins, for then our self-knowledge becomes a true one and is no longer troubled by any desire to find ourselves modeled in some such way as we should like to be. Such special self-knowledge is painful and depressing to the soul, but if we want to attain to the faculty of experience outside the body, it cannot be avoided, for it is necessarily called forth by the special position which we must take up with regard to our own soul. For the very strongest powers of the soul are required, even if it is only a question of an ordinary human being obtaining self-knowledge in a general way. We are observing ourselves from a standpoint outside our previous inner life. We have to say to ourselves, "I have contemplated and judged the things and occurrences of the world according to my human nature. I must now try to imagine that I cannot contemplate and judge them in that way. But then I should not want to be what I am. I should have no inner experiences. I should be a mere nothing. And not only a man in the midst of ordinary everyday life, who only very rarely even thinks about the world or life, would have to address himself in this way. Any man of science or any philosopher would have to do so. For even philosophy is only observation and judgment of the world according to individual qualities and conditions of the human soul life. Now such a judgment cannot mingle with supersensible surroundings. It is rejected by them. And therewith everything we have been up to that moment is rejected. We look back upon our whole soul, upon our ego itself, as upon something which has to be laid aside when we want to enter the supersensible world. The soul, however, cannot but consider this ego as its real being until it enters the supersensible worlds. The soul must consider it as the true human being and must say to itself, "Through this, my ego, I have to form ideas of the world. I must not lose this ego of mine if I do not want to give myself up as a being altogether." There is in the soul the strongest inclination to guard the ego at all points in order not to lose one's foothold absolutely. What the soul thus feels of necessity to be right in ordinary life, it must no longer feel when it enters supersensible surroundings. It has there to cross a threshold where it must leave behind not only this or that precious possession, but that very being which it has hitherto believed itself to be. The soul must be able to say to itself, "That which until now has seemed to me to be my surest truth, I must now, on the other side of the threshold of the supersensible world, be able to consider as my deepest error." Before such a demand, the soul may well recoil. The feeling may be so strong that the necessary steps would seem a surrender of its own being and an acknowledgement of its own nothingness, so that it admits more or less completely on the threshold its own powerlessness to fulfill the demands put before it. This acknowledgement may take all possible forms. It may appear merely as an instinct and seem to the pupil who thinks and acts upon it as something quite different from what it really is. He may, for instance, feel a great dislike to all supersensible truths. He may consider them as daydreams or imaginary fancies. He does so only because in those depths of his soul of which he is ignorant, he has a secret fear of these truths. He feels that he can only live with that which is admitted by his senses and his intellectual judgment. He therefore avoids arriving at the threshold of the supersensible world, and he veils the fact of his avoidance of it by saying, "That which is supposed to lie behind that threshold is not tenable by reason or by science." The fact is simply that he loves reason and science such as he knows them, because they are bound up with his ego. This is a very frequent form of self-love and cannot as such be brought into the supersensible world. It may also happen that there is not only this instinctive halt before the threshold. The pupil may consciously proceed to the threshold and then turn back because he fears that which lies before him. He will then not easily be able to blot out from the ordinary life of his soul the effect of thus approaching it. The effect will be that weakness will spread over the whole of his soul's life. What ought to take place is this, that the pupil, on entering the supersensible world, should make himself able to renounce that which in ordinary life he considers as the deepest truth, and to adapt himself to a different way of feeling and judging things. But at the same time, he must keep in mind that when he again confronts the physical world, he must make use of the ways of feeling and judging that are suitable for this physical world. He must not only learn to live in two different worlds, but also to live in each in quite a different way, and he must not allow his sound judgment, which he needs for ordinary life in the world of reason and of the senses, to be encroached upon by the fact that he is obliged to make use of another kind of discernment while in another world. To take up such a position is difficult for human nature, and the capacity for doing so is only acquired through continued, energetic, and patient strengthening of our soul life. Anyone who goes through the experiences of the threshold realizes that it is a boon to the ordinary life of the soul not to be led so far. The feelings that awaken are such that one cannot but think that this boon proceeds from some powerful entity who protects man from the danger of undergoing the dread of self-annihilation at the threshold. Behind the outer world of ordinary life, there is another. Before the threshold of this world, a stern guardian is standing, who prevents man from knowing what the laws of the supersensible world are. For all doubts and all uncertainty concerning that world are, after all, easier to bear than the sight of that which one must leave behind when we want to cross the threshold. The pupil remains protected against the experience described, as long as he does not step forward to the very threshold. The fact that he receives descriptions of such experiences from those who have trodden or crossed this threshold does not change the fact of his being protected. On the contrary, such communications may be of good service to him when he approaches the threshold. In this case, as in many others, a thing is done better if one has an idea of it beforehand. But as regards the self-knowledge which must be gained by a traveler in the supersensible world, is nothing changed by such preliminary knowledge. It is therefore not in harmony with the facts when many clairvoyants, or those acquainted with the nature of clairvoyance, assert that these things should not be mentioned at all to people who are not on the point of resolving to enter into the supersensible world. We are now living in a time when people must become more and more acquainted with the nature of the supersensible world if the life of their soul is to become equal to the demands of ordinary life upon it. The spread of supersensible knowledge, including the knowledge of the guardian of the threshold, is one of the tasks of the moment and of the immediate future.